What is going on, guys? Today we are looking at midfielders and we have a lot. There is loads to go through, and just as much as I'd like to put every single icon in every single time, we've personally got rid of them for these tier lists as they have their own tier list. So if you want to check that out, wait till the end of the video and you can go and look at the respective one, and we'll be doing a big icon tier list in the coming days. So if you want to subscribe for that, be all mine. So we have got a lot of midfielders to go through, and we are going to blast through them as we go now. So straight off the bat, Al Warren is number one. We've got to put him in. For me, Al Warren has always been incredible. We will try and minimize as much movement as possible as well. But Al Warren, especially now adding the fact that Ronaldo is in the Saudi League, has a nice link to him, as pretty much just giving him links and then having Portuguese links as well. But Al Warren is incredible. Cam, not really centre mid, I would probably say more Cam, and a lot of people do go for the striker or winger option for him, but even in terms of a midfielder, I still think he is very much in that top tier still. Bellingham right next to him. Again, you can't argue with team of the years. At this point, you'll see throughout a lot of these players, he is elite. He's absolutely elite. We've got a fodder option as well because we have really gone back with all of the midfielders. Some really good cards, to be honest. If we then look around, we'll look at Barella. Personally, for me, I feel like he's a solid card, a standout midfielder in the Serie A, but I do think there is elements of not necessarily in that top tier yet. Normally, once we get towards the end of the game, we start to see a lot of the different players, for instance, any sort of footies that tend to get a card, they are upgraded to the point where they are in that top field. Barella, for me, as a card that can kind of be up there, I'd say an A is probably more respectable. If we're looking a bit further down now, we'll go for a Bruno Gomes, an incredible box-to-box. Was very unlucky to not continually get more upgrades in the World Cup, and I do think still to this day, he comes in that A category for me. I feel like the rounded stats across the board is very nice. You look at a Shadow, you're looking at 90 pace, then probably more 90 defending over the top there. A very, very standout player right there. If we're looking at Chiellini, I'm going to personally put him in fodder. I like him as a flashback or obviously moment centre-back, but in terms of a change in position, he really just didn't change in that much aspect. And it's kind of like it's a funny gimmick with them sort of cards. I like the fact that they do have these shapeshifters. Winter Wildcard kind of took that vibe as well. And I do like that they do that. When we see like a Ramos go as a striker or a Lukaku as centre-back, it's just adding a different factor. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be the most meta, but most definitely I absolutely rate it and continually do that. We then have Kev. I can see the top of the team of the year. Obviously, he's always going to be a top dog. He is incredible as always. Team of the season, footies, team of the year. He's always got to be in that top spot. We then look at Briaz Mendes, an objective that you could have got done if you finished, I can't remember what the game mode was, but it was like 15 matches you just had to play. He's now had an upgrade for obviously Real Sociedad going through. I think in terms of the card as a Cam, 85 pace, 85 shooting, standard, nice passing, good dribbling. I feel like he comes in that very mid tier. If I'm thinking at the moment, I'm going to say C. Obviously, he can be upgraded, which we're not going off. We're going off what the ratings are today. And obviously, if he does get upgraded in the next tier list, we'll then bump him up or bump him down. Also, I will kind of keep going through as we start to put players in. If I feel like they probably don't deserve to be in that role and maybe need to be shifted up, we'll shift him up during the video or at least at the end. Brahim Diaz, personally for me, is going to go in that fodder. Same with this guy. For me, there is a lot of players here that most definitely are not really more good players anymore. We're seeing a lot of kind of the mid-tier 10 to 30k players. Cherokee most definitely is not one of them. That is 100%. He is an incredible card. A 5-star that is just an absolute dream. He is beautiful going on the wing, going in the cam, the striker. Striker role, I will say, you've got to be in a kind of mid to okay top tier. Elite, I don't feel like he's going to do striker role very well. I feel like that is then going to be wing or kind of cam centre forward with outlets up top. Casemiro, again, I'd love to put him in that top tier. Love to say S. I feel like this version, especially with the nice pace increase, I'd go with A, but I feel like if we do get some more cards, it is just the defensive and physical ability that is keeping him up in the top category, pace-wise, is gonna start to be an issue at some point. Now we've got even better cams, like we've said with Cherokee, with now the Team of the Years. There's going to be a lot of options going forward where the pace is really going to matter. With Casemiro, I think the biggest thing you can do with him is jockey, is play the field, don't go barging in, and he'll do really well. If then we look at a former teammate of his in Benzema 92, I feel like this card is relatively nice. In terms of a centre mid, he's definitely had a nice, well-rounded upgrade. The defence has gone up. Obviously, physicality, dribbling, passing has always been relatively good for him. And he's got a bit of a pace increase as well, which is always nice. Still kept a good amount of shooting, which again is nice. But in terms of a centre mid, I still think personally it was like Chiellini, it kind of paid off a little bit more, but I do prefer him in them more forward roles. As a cam, I feel like he'll do okay, but sometimes the dribbling just purely based on the in-game kind of mechanics for him is a little bit of a letdown. Are you tired of using players like this? I would much rather have teams more like this. Then I recommend going over to skycoach.gg for all of your coaching and coins needs. They are cheap, fast and reliable, but at the checkout make sure you are using code JT11 for a discount on your orders. Back to the video. We then have Dani Olmo. There is a couple of informs in here. Tried to kind of go with cards that I could kind of speak about from last year as well. Very, very quickly. Nice card last year. That's it. Then we have Daniel Pereira. No, I'm joking. In terms of his card last year, he did have a nice upgrade once he does get kind of forward in them ratings. I feel like a nice, big, well-rounded upgrade could put him on the map for a Bundesliga upgrade. But for right now, he's always going to be fodder. As we then continue, Daniel Pereira, 80 pace, it's a standard. I feel like right now, personally, he would be more in that fodder period. I don't feel like he's going to go too much more. Again, when he came out, not bad. Right now, probably sitting in that fodder period. If we're looking at Bruno, I feel like Bruno, again, is waiting for that big upgrade. He's had an inform this week, but unfortunately it's lower than his World Cup stories. He needs that bit more of a pace. He's got a little bit of dribbling, but definitely, again, I feel like pace, dribbling is the two things that are holding him back now. We've got a good amount of shooting and passing on him, and obviously the skills are always coming in. But I feel like if I'm looking at what's going to be in this A, unfortunately, I feel like he's going to be B for me. De Jong, still absolutely sensational. Again, another card that we would love to see a big upgrade for, and hopefully in the coming promos, we can start to see some monster upgrades happening as we then kind of take that road to the team of the season. But De Jong, for me, I feel like he's on the border. I'd probably say another +1 or 2. He's got to be in that S. I feel like at the moment, A is where I'm going to keep him for the moment, and we'll see how he goes through the tiers. Coutinho, an SBC that came out, and well, in fact, no, he wasn't even an SBC, he was a token. I feel like in terms of tokens, he just wasn't the one to take. I can't remember which one it was now. I don't know if it was... I feel like I know it, but I don't think it was Future Star. It was a couple before that. But in general, I just don't feel like he's really coming in that much anymore. In terms of cams, I'm probably close to putting him more into that fodder. The fact that Mendes, I know a newer card, has got better stats kind of throughout, other than the dribbling, everything else is fantastic. So I think in terms of Prem, we're going to keep him in C, but I feel like he's very, very close to being into that fodder. As we then go on to another Prem cam, Odegaard, very cheap, nice and easy, good card. I feel like B is probably the place to be at the moment. Probably a couple more upgrades and then would C into that A. Probably 91 I'd kind of recommend for him. It needs a really, really solid upgrade through the base of him. And we've got a very good cam there. David Silva, we've just got cam central. Personally for me, he's going straight into that fodder. I just don't see any need for him. Same with Delaney, to be honest. I feel like in terms of that card, maybe even when he came out, he probably was still behind the curve. 76 pace, 80 passing. As a DM, he's got nice defensive and physical ability, but everything else is a little bit woeful. We then see Brozovic in that CDM role, a lovely card for very cheap, and that was kind of his selling point. You add a shadow to him, you end up with 87 pace, you end up with 90 plus defending, already good physicals, passing, dribbling, both at 87, and the fact that I think when I first had a look at him, he was about 30 to 50k just after he's been upgraded. I'd say it's a nice card for a 90. At the minute, I'm going to put him slap bang in the middle. I feel like that is kind of his role. In terms of Fabinho, I do feel like the same. I think with Fabinho, in fact, I'd even go... I think for me, I'm going to keep him in B. Mainly for the fact that I feel like so many tokens of that was just not worth getting a DM at that point. The fact that we just had a Vieira World Cup as well, I just don't see why you'd, if you wanted a DM and you were willing to kind of get rid of packs for it, even though he was half the tokens, I feel like you'd have definitely saved for that Vieira rather than going for Fabinho, if obviously you were kind of willing to give up some packs for it. But even so, the defensive and physical and plus in-game ability really holds this card in that rating. If he didn't have that, I feel like he definitely would be fodder at this point. But for now, we're going to keep him in that middle. We have Berghuis. Again, not a bad card in terms of a cam. It adds a good element to the Eredivisie. Pretty much very good forward ability. Defensive, obviously not going to be. Again, I'm going to go with B for him. I feel like he's a little bit better than Mendes and Coutinho, but I wouldn't necessarily put him in this top A category. And I feel like he's probably on the same sort of level as Odegaard in terms of stats, most definitely. It is going to be a major factor for the league. Same with Fekir. I'm going to go here with him, just purely for the fact that I do feel like he was underwhelming this year. We don't see him very often, and most definitely with the card last year, you saw him even though there were better options. He had that almost driving factor that really worked. This year, he's good, most definitely very good, but I just don't think that he's as meta this year as personally what he was. So I'm going to stick him in that B at the moment. Again, things can change. We'll see how we go because there is, I think, over 130 cards to go through. De Paul, nice cheap centre mid. Definitely coming down in value now. I feel like he's very close to just being fodder, but I think the well-rounded 80 plus on everything is doing a wonders. And I'm thinking, I'm going to keep going with some centre mids because I do think when we look at Cabalios, I want to say he pronounce his name. Again, very similar, to be honest. He is coming in, I want to say, cheaper than what De Paul did at the time, but it's an interesting one to see. We then have Enzo, who's definitely going straight in that middle. A great, well-rounded kind of centre mid. Obviously coming in at a very premium price, which we could kind of expect. He's got pretty good stats throughout. Maybe this is a start for him, so it will be interesting to see where he goes forward. And I think definitely the future stars that are at the top level are still very, very in contention for a footies. So if we do see a 95, 96 Enzo by the end of the game, it would be a very, very top end card. We then go to Fofana. I'm not arguing with anybody. He's going into the A. Phenomenal player. Same with another Fofana again as well. What I like about these two specifically, I feel like they're very, very similar. Even though one's got a little bit less stats, they both bring a very almost bully mentality into that centre mid CDM role. They're very, very stocky. They're good at their tackling. They've got the physical and they work really well. Plus some of the links does good in the Ligue 1. Obviously, we then have, I think I saw Forsberg into the fodder straight away. I don't feel like I can see any more fodder here. I feel like Amrabat definitely is coming into that C category now in terms of a cheap player, most definitely. Same as Benacer, cheap players, but definitely outsourced now. I feel like you can get so much better that you just know that they're definitely coming into the lower tier of stuff, but we're not quite at that fodder point yet. If you've got an elite team, obviously, if you're looking at Hullet, Vieira, Matthias, obviously them into the prime Ronaldinhos, all of them into the middle, then fair enough. Yeah, yes, you're probably looking at half of this list being fodder. But in terms of the kind of standard team, if you're brand new to it, I feel like anybody C and above is definitely worth a have a look at. Then we see our man Fred, a beautiful centre mid from the Foot Centurions. Again, very well rounded. Do feel like he's still missing that little bit of talent, so it'll be interesting to see where he kind of goes forward. So we're going to keep him in that B. I feel like he's definitely at company. Benzema, if we look then kind of a little bit below, I'd probably prefer him, to be honest, over the De Paul, but I don't know if that again is the Prem tax really talking rather than necessarily his natural ability. Same with Gundogan. Again, a card that I really think in Team of the Year moments, I feel like we could have got better. 88 rated. The stats, to be honest, even so, you're looking at fodder almost. It's a very, very underwhelming card for a promo that is elite. I'm not necessarily asking for a 93, 94. Would be nice just to have that one-off player, but I feel like a 90 at the minimum with a solid upgrade would have been the better shout. We then see Gravenberch, we've always got to add him in. Personally, team in a season last year did him really well. This year, he's kind of struggling to get to the pace of it. Whether he gets a team of the season is probably unlikely looking at the Bundesliga. But again, there is always community. There is always footies at the end of it. And I feel like that's where this card personally would really come into fruition with what we saw last year and the hype we got last year. Goetze, again, in terms of Cam, I feel like he's on the brink of C to fodder. You may be able to get something with him if you're running a German and Bundesliga team at a very mediocre level. But I think he's going to be fodder before too long. Guardado, trying to think how you pronounce his name then. Definitely fodder, 100%. Feel like Eriksson, again, is probably going into the fodder at some point. Even now, looking at him, I'm like, if I judge him from the other centre mids, we've got De Paul. He is kind of more of your Cam aspect because of the pace side of stuff. I feel like fodder's probably the right move for him. We've got Baby Hullet, beautiful card, very much like his dad. He's got a good, well-rounded stats to start with. I don't know personally if that is the gist of him or if that is just purely for the fact his Winter Wild card is juiced in that way. But I do think in terms of what he cost, I feel like he's not a bad card, but definitely coming down in value very, very shortly. We have Carlos Soler. Again, it won his upgrade, which is always nice. If we was looking at it from the start, kind of very underwhelming. Now we've got a little bit of an upgrade here. We've got some dribbling and passing, which is looking good. The pace side of it, not bad at all. I feel like I'd be very, very harsh to put him in that C. I feel like B for the moment, and we'll see how he goes. Harriet, always going into the fodder. Same with Mario. Then we're looking a bit further down, just seeing if we've got any more. Kovacic can definitely go in there. I feel like Klaassen as well. We've got a few more here, just seeing if we've got any more fodder-based ones. There is quite a few, as we can see. We'll kind of go over them in a second. Other than that, I feel like we're looking pretty tidy there. We've got Kroos as a beautiful one here. This is just an outstanding centre mid. If you are looking at Tony Kroos's SBC and you did him, you've got a wonderful 5-5. The pace increase is massive for him, and I feel like that is the biggest bonus you've got with cards like this. They are cards that are tried and tested throughout 10 plus years, that are phenomenal in the game, but they've lost their pace. They've lost their element, their spring in their step. We know FIFA is all about pace, so getting that upgrade, the PKs, the Chiellinis, the Bonuses, the Ramoses for centre-backs. If we're then looking at Muller, we're looking at Kroos, funnily enough, 2 Germans, and obviously many, many more. Conte being another one. I feel like he's starting now. Not necessarily this year, definitely not as kind of meta as what we used to know, but we do have a meta card now. But the upgrade of him is definitely the one that you want to look for. And if we're going to go find him, we will find him here. We will definitely put him into that S, because Conte is just a joke of a player. He is phenomenal. Every year he's been incredible. This year, he's now unfortunately starting to lose that little bit of an edge. So hopefully we can see another big card before we really lose him, potentially next year if he does drop down again. If then we go a bit further down, we'll just zoom out a little bit so I don't have to keep scrolling. We'll look at the first set here. Kessie, again, I feel like we'll go with the C option for him. He was in my team a couple of months ago now, to be honest, and I normally like to keep as many players and get as many games out of them as possible. I feel like now without an upgrade, he's just not getting anywhere. Goretzka, we're going to go into the A. It's just 100%. We're going to take his partner as well, Kimmich. Both incredible centre mids. They run the Bundesliga with that kind of upgraded card feel. The team of the seasons are normally fantastic, and I feel like these two together are always offering options. Same with Gomez. I feel like in terms of the cam, definitely slept on and not looked at as much, and I do think that most years with him, he tends to get quite a nice card, a 91 that just comes out of nowhere, and yet the price is definitely not reflecting. We see Lamar. Again, to be honest, I'd probably go with B with Lamar again. He, again, is a nice card, very balanced. Do feel like he offers more as the attacking side of stuff, but can put a shadow on him and just put him in the way. We're not looking for major goals from him, but in terms of kind of just being that midfielder that offers the option going forward, I feel like he's still got a little bit of a run in him. We then look at a few more. We've got Kubo, who's probably going into that fodder, to be honest. We have Locatelli, who is a brand new card from yesterday, no, day before in the Showdown version. Again, in terms of a DM, it's very average. 87 rated with a chance to go up. Obviously, if we was doing this in a couple of days when the match actually happens, and if they do win, then yes, an 89 version of him would actually be quite nice. He'd go over 80 pace, we'd have probably 89 defending, 88 physical. It would be a relatively nice card. So I'm going to go B for right now because I feel like he's very standard in what we're seeing in them DMs. But if he was to get the 89, I'd probably then push him into the A category. We have Paqueta. Again, to be honest, probably going into the fodder more than anything now. I feel like he was nice to start with, but because it has been such a long time with him, he's more than likely fallen behind the waistline. Marquisio, enough said, definitely going into that S. We have Mascherano, who, to be honest, in-game is actually really good. In terms of the pace side of him, does have a little bit of problems every now and then. You are going to go with the Shadow still, which will, unfortunately, neglect the dribbling and passing. You could potentially go with the Engine if you are a solid defender, because he has got that defensive and physical background already. And if you wanted to get a bit more agility balance and kind of take away 3 to 4 pace off him, you could go with the Engine just to give him that little bit more of a well-rounded feel. But I do think as a centre-back does the option, but definitely in this hero version, a CDM is where I'm at with him. Then we've got Player of the Month Messi. Messi's always great in the game. The dribbling side of him is just naturally brilliant. If you've got the Player of the Month, you're laughing with him. We then have Govu as a cam. Honestly, more of a striker if I'm being honest. I do feel like he's still got a good amount in that cam aspect to really give it its all, but I don't think he's going to be S. Maybe when he first came out, I probably would have suggested that he would have been in that topper tier, as I do think as a striker, definitely nice. Cam-wise now, offers a good option still. We then have Jorginho. Again, not a bad card, a nice little flashback into his new Arsenal team, which, to be honest, is very standard. If I'm looking at the centre mids, I'm trying to think Barella. I'd probably go with Barella personally. You've then got De Jong, would definitely prefer De Jong. Fofana is more of a DM. Kimmich. And then in terms of the B categories, we're looking at the centre mids. Gravenberch is not bad. I feel like the thing that's kind of swaying me with Jorginho, and it's very much like Xavi and very much like a Modric-esque card. The passing is really good. The dribbling's very neat and tidy, but the passing is something that really opens up the defence. And if you can play to his strengths, I'm going to go with the A. Maybe controversial because I feel like there's definitely players in the B category that in a centre mid offer a good value as well. But I do think the passing side of him is what's stepping him over the line. The defensive side, you add a Shadow onto him, you're looking pretty good already. We then see James Milner into the fodder. Muller, again, I've got a love-hate relationship with Muller. It's a nice rating. He's got a nice card, but I am very close to putting... We're going to put him in C purely for the fact if Mendes and Coutinho can go in C, he will stay there for one more week, but he's more than likely fodder going forward. We then have Modric. You can take your place into the S because Modric, Team of the Year, incredible. Enough said. Mason Mount, again, I feel like someone's got to go in fodder. Someone's got to break the bank because with the C category, I feel like it's getting crowded with very mediocre players. They're very similar. I feel like if we look at Mendes, Coutinho, we then look at obviously Muller and Mount, they're all very, very similar in their aspects of their cam. They've got a bit of pace. They've got some good shooting. Dribbling tends to be kind of either Coutinho's level or Mendes' level. Passing-wise, again, throughout is nice. Defensive is nothing, obviously. And physicality, I don't think any of them have got above 80. So they are practically the same player. And it's the funny thing going through this list. The amount of players that are so similar, it is absolutely scary. There is literally just carbon copies of stats. We then have Carvalho as a future star. I feel like he's definitely the step up, mainly because of the pace increase. The card itself plays really well in game. We managed to get him untradeable, but he's nothing like Musiala. He is what we've been waiting for, and is definitely an S cam. Beautiful pace, great dribbling, passing's good, and obviously the skill moves on weak foot does add that level to him. I feel like we're going to have to go out one more, but we will obviously zoom in as we get towards the end. Let's have a look and see if we can just add some more fodder to here, though. We have got quite a few. Oxford, definitely fodder. And then look a bit further down. Van der Beek. To be honest, though, Yeah, we'll go with fodder for him. Declan Rice, I'd probably go with C, to be honest. I feel like if we've got this level of cams, the CDMs themselves, he's probably at that sort of level, personally. Parejo, fodder, 100%. Even Paredes, to be honest. Ozil, even though, again, we're going to break the bank with Ozil. I feel like this is kind of like the level. He's just a little bit under for me, and obviously not having the right leagues, it's not going to work at all with the chemistry at all. Renato Sanchez, I know we're always going to go with S for him. He is just missing out on that upgrade now. I'm going to give him benefit of the doubt for the first one, because for an 85, he takes over a lot of centre mids, which is absolutely scary to think. Very much like a Furlan Mendy in left back. He just does it. Ramsey, Reina, 100%. Raquelme, Rodri. There is a lot of fodder. Like I say, once we've got them all in, we will have a look and kind of go through some of them individually. We'll show you what the kind of S to fodder category really looks like. Tolisso nowadays definitely needs an upgrade. Who else we got? I think these are relatively nice. Faguli, let's have a little zoom in. 86. In terms of a centre mid, he's got great dribbling. It's the defensive and shooting and physical that are really lacking, but I feel like he's definitely not fodder yet. Ravioli, no, not happening. Sancho, Ramsey's not bad. Pellegrini, again, in terms of cam, I feel like he's got to be fodder. We're looking at the difference between him and the guys above him. I'd definitely pick probably 90% of them at the minimum. We then look at Tchouaméni, who's still very good. Wijnaldum. I feel like we might. Wirtz is definitely going in there. He didn't have anything to start with. We packed him about 7 times, and honestly, every time I used him, was disappointed more than ever. I think, if we're looking at that list, I'd say everybody else is away from fodder. Traoré. Yeah, I feel like everybody else is away from fodder. If we're looking at the top tier then, we're going to put them in because I don't want to zoom too much, as obviously the tier list is getting a bit crowded. We'll get the S tier in and we'll talk about them. Right, we've got the additions into the S tier. Neymar, Nkunku, Okocha, Toure, Thuram and Pogba. Incredible. I feel like Neymar we don't have to add too much to. It's Neymar. Dribbling, shooting, everything. Neymar's Neymar. And Nkunku had a beautiful upgrade, and the only one that's managed to sneak in actually being a centre forward to start with this tier list with the midfielders, we are personally going for CDM, CM, Cams. Original position as well. So if a centre forward, if we've got for instance a Neymar centre forward, he would be in the forwards. He would be in the attacking players, same as left mid, left wings, because predominantly a lot of left mids are more better as a left wing anyway. Mane being the perfect example for that. And I think same as Salah, I'm pretty sure he was a right mid at some point. But in terms of Nkunku, very all-round good player, can play in that cam role and definitely play in the more forward roles. Probably I'd say cam centre forward, maybe a striker in the lower divisions, and then left wing, right wing as well will do really well. Okocha, still incredible. In game is just beautiful. The dribbling element of him, the skill move, the weak foot, always adds up to be nice. And I do think the one thing that a lot of people don't like with Okocha is I think he's a very specific play style, and sometimes people just can't adapt to that one. Yaya Toure is Yaya Toure, as we know. Thuram is beautiful. I have seen him so many times, even though the stats don't scream amazing. I've seen him so much that he's definitely worth having a look at, because he is an absolute monster in that centre mid. And then we have our man Pogba. Again, there's enough said about Pogba. I was kind of thinking he would have been more of a FUT birthday, but we could still get that. It's probably a bit close to home. I do think that he's been released too recent for FUT birthday to really add a new card for him, but I do think the SBC for him in this is outstanding. We've then added a few more cards into the C. We go from Faguli. Again, I do feel like in terms of him, he's not necessarily going to give you too much of an option. Havertz, very similar to all the other cams. Rabiot losing a little bit now. I do think with Rabiot, it's kind of a double-edged sword with him, because I do think there is some players in the B category that I feel like he's very similar to, but it's just the in-game of him. I've never really been able to kind of get on with him unless he's had that big upgrade, the 90 plus, and I think that just then comes down to stats being completely overhauled. Whereas I think this card for me now is starting to lose its kind of value. Same with Busquets. Nice card to start with the World Cup, but definitely coming under fire now. Same as Tchouaméni. If Kessie's in there, he's got to be in there. We're waiting for another upgrade. If he does manage to at any point, that will be in forms or more than likely an out of performance later on in the game. Wijnaldum, very similar to a lot of the centre mids, doesn't really give you too much value. Same as Zinchenko, and I think with the SBC of him, it just wasn't worth doing at the time. And then finally Ziyech, even though I do think Ziyech could definitely get in the B, but the big thing for him is always that weak foot. It's just, unfortunately, not enough. We then have some more in the B category now. We've got from, I think it was Benicure. So again, we've got a few nice ones here. So Benicure, when he first came out, beautiful upgrade. I feel like the price of him was really nice and well balanced. And obviously the Prem centre mid, good defensive physical. Now he's starting to come down, and I feel like the more centre mids added, he will start to drop down. Mainly because the pace is not going to be enough. Camavinga, very similar story. Once he came out, was a very hefty price as well. Because Real Madrid, French centre mid, you're always going to have that extra value to him. Now he's losing the value. There is unfortunately better out there. Cancelo, I feel like with this card, it's a beauty. Like, this is one of the first promos, and he got an absolute monster upgrade to a 90. Now we're starting to see him slowly come down. It will take a shapeshifter, for instance, like how we get a Tal, how we got Trent as a 94-95. That would be the next step for him to take a position in the midfield. We then have a couple of future stars, and as you can see, we're starting now, because these are more recent promos, you start to see a big pace increase. You start to see passing, dribbling come onto these centre mids / cams. Same with Lindstrom, Vitinha, obviously Traore. You just see where these stats are, and as you go through from out of position, from rule breakers to stories, you can see where these upgrades actually happen. And if you dive deep and really care about the in-game stats, you look at then composure, you look at curve, you look at agility, balance. There is a constant theme and trend of them just slowly going more and more. Some cards may only have 89, well, even say 85 dribbling, but the composure will be 90, and something that is irrelevant, say for instance, reaction's quite a good one for a defensive player, but for attacking, is it needed as much? You'll find that that will take the hit, and yet you'll get the bigger agility balance. And it's stuff like that that completely changes how a card uses. So it's an interesting one to see. Same with Willock. Carvalho's coming in as a standard now. Same with Zambo. I feel like they have a very good kind of defensive physical attribute, as well as adding the shadow onto them, but they are slowly slipping away. We have Perisic, who was great value when he came out. We have Park Ji-sung, who's slowly now starting to go down. And then same with Mkhitaryan. Better than the cams below, mainly for that dribbling ability. Incredible stuff. And then we have the same with Royce, Sane, very, very similar in them sort of cams, and same with Milinkovic-Savic as well. And then finally we come into this A category. We've got the whole bottom row all added. Gavi, brand new card, very much like the Pedri. They offer almost the same sort of value. Their dribbling's nice, they've got some good passing, obviously the pace has been upgraded. The shooting and defending definitely could do with the upgrade, that's where the shadow personally comes in, and I do think Gavi looks better in terms of the player, but it is all of it mixed together is where I personally really rate the A sort of side, and it is all dependent on how your midfield sets up. Personally, I like a 2 midfield at a minimum. I don't really like the CDM and cam aspect. I like centre mids. Personally, I play with the 4-4-2, so I tend to have a very defensive midfielder and a very attacking midfielder. But in the elements that the attacking midfielder can still defend. Personally, it's Xabi Alonso and Zidane. Even though Zidane's not necessarily got defensive in his blood, you can put him in the way and he does it. The high-rated card gets away with it. We then have Guendouzi, who I still think is a great buy to get. A CDM in the French League, great links. Obviously has a good amount of rounded stats as well. Payet, I always rave about him. It's only just since Ben Yedder came out that he's actually taken out of my team. And he's been in there since Winter Wildcard has happened. Sancho, lovely upgrade. Feel like it's something he definitely needed with no informs, no performance base or anything happening. Obviously, due to the lack of performance from him. Phillips, nice addition. Again, got the chance to go up in rating. A road to the final, which we would see a nice upgrade from him. But I think in terms of a DM for the English nation, you can't argue. Bernardo Silva always adds the dribbling. Very, very top-end player. Sissoko, again, as a defensive player, always been cracking. Solid, physicality's nice, got a good pace, will do the job. Same with Timber. As we see, CDM in the Eredivisie, they need something to do with him. He has obviously got 2 picks, so you could go a centre-back or a CDM, and both can play other positions. So, for instance, this CDM card can play a centre-back, and the centre-back can play CDM, but I do think the CDM is 100% the option to go. Tonale from the tokens, again, not a bad card. Starting to slip down a little bit. Feel like you could probably argue the B with him, but I do think in-game, his natural ability is good. Valverde's been an absolute storm this year. He is just absolutely card after card after card, and guaranteed pretty much by now a team of the season, which will be a beautiful 90, at least a 95, I would say. Verratti's passing and dribbling is just elite, even though necessarily the physicality and height really lose him that defensive midfielder kind of role. He still has an absolute job to do, and he does it every time. And finally, Zachariah is a monster this year. In the Prem, it's added a new dynamic to him. You've got obviously the links from Chelsea as well as all of the Premier League, and he will be a great player with a big upgrade. But this card, still very, very nice. And that's going to be your tier list. So we have finally finished, as we'll zoom out and show you everybody. It is a cracking amount of players. Let me know down below who your best midfielder in your team is, and anybody else on this list that I've missed. I feel like I've got a good variety. We'll just go down on this. I will take my webcam off so you can see absolutely everybody. But this is the full list. We'll slowly go down. Let me know what you think about it. Just slowly. If you need to pause it, pause it. But if you did enjoy, make sure you like and subscribe. I feel like we've got through a very good amount of players here. What do you think? Let me know down below. Peaces. Oh, you can't see me. Peaces.